Good morning and welcome to Liberty Explored. I'm Isaac the Explorer. Now, this might be the most important video I've ever made, so I really hope you watch it. If you see yourself on a team and that team is not Team Humanity, then you are really missing the boat. Let's get right into it. So, I want to talk today a little bit about America and the United States and what it means to be an American, but also what it means to be a human. Because the descent into Moloch, and I'm writing a book on this. I hope everybody goes out and buys it. But really, if you just watch this video, I'm going to condense everything that's the most important parts of that book into this video today. I'm going to try and make it as short as possible. So please watch all the way through. There's something here for everyone. And I've got a couple really great videos to share with you that I think really inspire and come from the heart and show that this is not about left versus right. This is not about one nation versus another. It's not about one religion versus another. And it's definitely not about racism or man versus woman. So, why are we not called New England or New Britain? Right? When America was first started, we started with one of the best ideas ever, which was to break away from a tyrannical rule that had taken over us. And while Britain was the empire at the time, and the colonizers had gained power in this particular area of the world, although there were multiple centers of power, each representing the different primary power centers of the world who were going around colonizing. Britain had gained control, and essentially we were a division of Britain. That's why it's called New England over there in the eastern part of the United States where they landed. Well, why are we called the United States? What does that mean to be united? Well, I think one of the things to remember is that any uprising, anytime a revolution happens where the people turn against a powerful tyranny or some type of empire, usually the empire has descended away from the common values that we all have in common. And that's why I talk about Team Humanity. What does it mean to be on Team Humanity? Well, when an empire starts abusing its people, when any group becomes large enough that it descends into a type of hate, into a type of control systems that abuse the heart. And when we trick each other into thinking just through our minds and through cult-like association, it always has the same quality. It's the same quality of taking away from the heart. Now, the values of Christianity, which this nation was formed on, is one of the most awesome ways of starting a country, because at least in the Christian value system, there's a set of rules, and the set of rules are guided by what I would call heart principles. And I love when people share scripture when I'm posting these videos or putting certain comments out there into the world. And lately I've been getting a lot of people who share scripture with me, and I think that's totally awesome. When I say scripture, I like to say that instead of the Bible, because all these old texts have a certain thread of commonality that runs through them, whether it's the Tao Te Ching or the teachings of Buddha or the Bible, or even the apocryphal texts of the Bible, the ones that have been left out, like the Book of Enoch. And the point I'm trying to make there is that if someone shares some of these texts with me, these scriptures, usually it's for the purpose of trying to share a commonality, something that we all have in common. And that brings me back to team humanity. What does it mean to be on team humanity and not on team Isaac? Or, you can just keep expanding that out until you finally get to humanity. And if you're on a team that's focused on a nation, you're prone to misinformation. If you're on a team that's focused on a race, you're prone to misinformation. And the reason why that is the same reason that we're driven by corporate structures in the world today. The corporate structures are very successful. It really helps when you draw borders around a group of people and say, mine, not yours. But to keep that power, to keep that that energy connected, there's a type of dissent in phraseology, in words, in the essentially cult-like association that comes from being a part of any group. So I want to talk a little bit about my friend Father Charlie, who anybody who comes from this area who's around my age might have had the experience of knowing Father Charlie. And Father Charlie was a Catholic priest who was actually kicked out of the Catholic Church eventually. You might say for being too smart or for being someone who, like me, follows the scriptures. And he was interested in all the scriptures, just like I am. And one of the greatest things that he taught me was the concept of lighthearted. And I think when we think of what does it mean to be lighthearted, what does it mean to be a person who comes from the heart? And what do all these sayings stem from when they say something like wear your heart on your sleeve, to be lighthearted? I think the commonality there is to break away from the thinking of the mind, where the mind is full of deception. Words are prone to deception. Language itself is the tool of Moloch because it enables us through association, through repetition. If we're constantly repeated a certain phrase or something, we can easily be drawn into a type of spell. A spell that's cast through words into our brain, and it spins around in there with empowering at times, but always it has this commonality which leads to break away from the heart. And if we remember our heart, it comes from a type of silence, the knowledge there. It comes from a type of listening. When we go and listen to nature, we might find this same type of wisdom. The Tao Te Ching talks about it a lot. The very first phrase of the Tao Te Ching, which is, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And what that means is that once we try and name a principle of God or a principle of the great mystery, we lose it. The same thing happens to these people who have a type of aha realization while they're on LSD or something like that. They might have this moment where you have figured it all out, but as soon as you come back to reality and are no longer under the influence of the drug, you come back to a point of being stuck in the words. And I think there's the greatest aha moment would be something like this. if I could break it down into the words that actually do create the understanding of what this is, that what would be the greatest set of words to guide us. And that would be connected to the one. So I think what I want to get to with that is connecting the values of Moloch and with self-interest, and how we are easily drawn into a perversion of values that actually goes against our own self-interest. And that's a horrible, horrible thing that happens to everyone. And so real quick, I think I've got a couple great videos to share with you to talk about, to highlight a little bit about why it's really important to understand that there isn't a left-right divide that's really guiding the United States. Like, the principle of the United States is united. And the reason that we all came together against Britain at the time was because of overtaxation, was because of abuse, tyrannical abuse of the people. And the principle of uniting is a very powerful one. And the way we do that is by finding the commonalities. It's by listening to our heart, because when our heart tells us, talks to us, and speaks through us, the heart has a commonality in its speech, in its lack of speech, and that is a kindness. It's a lightheartedness, and that's the greatest thing that I learned from Father Charlie, was this lightheartedness. So let's check out these couple of videos. I think you guys will really like them. It was inspiring to me.
If you are on the left, you are not my enemy.
It is with pride that we announced our next guest. Thank you, Cenk, for coming on.
No problem, Tucker. Thanks for having me on. I think it's important that we have a moment like this where we try to bring the country together.
Amen. I so strongly agree.
Wake up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Thank you.
We have to now meet in the middle.
Do you think that America should just cut ties with Israel altogether?
What's your definition of cut ties?
Like stop funding them, stop being their military arm?
Yes,
okay,
I'm on
great.
record saying.
Okay.
What you're doing here is so important, Congresswoman Greene, so please thank you, because I know that you now have a target on your back, and I'm sure you're being called all sorts of ridiculous names because you want to, prioritize the American people.
AIPAC needs to register under FARA. I've openly demanded that, and if we had a Department of Justice that was doing its job, they would be investigating AIPAC. But I think the American people see through it, and the tide is rapidly changing, and I tell you, one of the most delightful experiences I've had since I've been in Washington is that I'm finding common ground with people on the left and the right that really want to focus in on America. And I think that's the best thing that can happen. And that's why I'm delighted to have conversations with the two of you. And I look forward to finding more common ground, because I think that could be the best thing that could happen for all of us.
Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, we appreciate you coming on the Young Turks.
Thank you.
I just want to say this about Congressman Massey, and I hope I don't hurt him more in his district by saying nice things. But wherever you are on his ideology, he's a profile in courage. I mean, he's got billions of dollars being spent against him. He's got billions of dollars because people don't want the Epstein release. He's got billions of dollars because AIPAC has been attacking him.
Prices have not come down at all.
The job market is weak.
Job market is still extremely difficult.
Right.
Wages have not gone up. Health insurance premiums are going to go up. Car insurance goes up every year. People's homeowners insurance goes up. Rent is going up. Young people have no hope of buying a home. And then when they try to buy a home, they end up, like I said, they end up competing with like Blackstone or somebody else.
The average home buyer now is 38 years old. It just came out.
Right.
The average home buyer, 38.
Prices have not gone. Since I've become a member of Congress since 2021, we have voted on 22 resolutions for Israel, 22 of them. All kinds of resolutions, denouncing anti-Semitism, supporting Israel. We voted on 22 of those. We never vote on resolutions proclaiming great things about America or defending certain Americans or defending Americans in general. But we have voted on 22 resolutions in the House defending Israel.
How many of you voted yes on?
I don't know my exact record. The last one I voted no on, and then the one before that I voted present because I just started getting sick of it.
Well, that's kind of it. I mean, I've always noticed this, certainly in the last, I don't know how many years it's been, a while, where Republicans in the Congress are, always talking about Israel. I'm not against Israel. I've always liked Israel, so I haven't really noticed it. Okay, fine. Love Israel, love any country, whatever. But it feels like something has changed. Like why? And clearly it has for you. What is that thing?
Well, I think here's the situation. It's coming to a point where it's so obvious all the time in everyone's language, the social media posts they put out, the statements that they make. They have to proclaim Israel. They have to proclaim their faith and loyalty in Israel and how they, Israel is our greatest ally. And it's a statement that has to be made over and over and over again, to the point it's becoming like, wait a minute, what about our own country? What about our own people? And we have so many problems here in America. And we talk about this all the time. $37 trillion in debt. Just like you and I were speaking before, our kids' generations. My kids are 22, 25, and 27. And our children's generation, they can't afford rent. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford insurance. They can't buy a new car. They can't find a good paying job. They're living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, credit card bills stacked up. And they literally look to the future going, how am I ever going to realize the American dream? And it seems hopeless for them. But then in Congress, everyone is chasing and pursuing and proclaiming their loyalty to a foreign country.
Okay. So the reason I showed those videos, I really liked that first one. I was talking about people coming together. My point is to explain the concept of Moloch to people, because what you find on the left and the right, or on any nation that's trying to teach us to be divided, essentially that is the game plan. The entire business model requires that normal folks hate each other. Left versus right, white versus blacks, Latinos, locals versus immigrants, Christians versus Muslims, etc., etc. And my thing that I want to share with you guys is that is the teachings of Moloch. And the reason why Moloch is the perfect representative for this type of consciousness is Moloch is the deity. He's a type of devil, a form of Satan, if you will, that would be represented by sacrifice, and child sacrifice specifically. And child sacrifice is exactly the thing that I'm talking about where your incentives have become so perverted that they would actually descend to the level of perverting your own self-interest. And if you were to, for instance, sacrifice your own child at an altar out of fear or out of some type of need to be correct, be right, feel like your righteousness is greater because of your cult-like association with whatever tribe you're in, that essentially is the darkest principle of humanity. And no one should ever kill their own child. I mean, that's just a horrible thing. But that is the perfect representative of the delusion of perverted self-interest that Moloch represents. Now, I'm writing a whole book on this. I really think you guys should check it out. The pre-order is available. You find it on my page where I talk about this. But I think what this comes to the point of a head on, the apex of this understanding, is realizing that if you're on a tribe that is choosing someone else to blame, you're worshiping Moloch. If your nation is trying to blame someone else for something other than what is accurate and real, if they're trying to trick you into believing into Moloch, if they're trying to do that, then they deserve to be pointed out, right? But I want to bring up a point, which is I've never, ever in my whole entire life, I'm 53 years old, I've never once met a person who truly hates other people, like a true racist. Now, I've met some people who exhibit some traits like that at times. I've met some people who really have descended into a Moloch consciousness, but that doesn't, I can see through that's a temporary state. I forgive them for that temporary state. I recognize that it's easy to be tricked. It's easy to be deceived through words, through repetition, through cult-like association. And every organization, every group, every nationality that is not focused on unification, that doesn't recognize the similarities in all humans, has descended to that to some extent. And we need to forgive them. We need to recognize that the true answer is lightheartedness, is coming from the heart. And once you do that, you have the ability to step away from Moloch. You have the ability to recognize in yourself that you are the solution, that you are the cure. And I want to talk about this concept of influence. So we're like driven by influencers right now. It's part of the social media phenomenon. And I think the word influence is a really interesting one, because what do we say when somebody gets too drunk and starts driving the car and gets into an accident? We say they were under the influence of alcohol or of drugs. We say that influence is what had guided them to that point. And the reason I point that out is because words have a type of influence, and association, cult-like association, has an influence over people that draws them to Moloch. It draws them away from the heart, from Christ consciousness, if you want to call it that. And when we have an uprising, we rise above. And what are we rising above? We're rising above Moloch. We're rising above that consciousness that is the descent into hell, right? And this is one of the oldest principles that goes back into the dawn of time, the dawn of humanity. And I think we need to understand that when words have become so perverted in people's minds through repetition, where they can take a word of beauty and see it as evil, that is the temptation of Moloch right there. And it's also the control mechanism used by groups that are driven by the worship of Moloch. Now, they're not out there sacrificing children, but what they are doing is teaching you to hate a word like great, to hate a word like woke. And I did a whole video a little while ago where I mentioned the concept of looking up the word great and really understanding that words are just tools, right? We need these words to navigate life, to communicate with other people. The communion that we share when we have a commonality with someone else is a beautiful thing, and beauty, greatness, striving towards coming from lightheartedness, for being a heart-centered person. These are all concepts that we need to be accepting, to allow into our life, and we need to allow those into our hearts if we're going to have any type of shared perspective, any communication with anybody. And I shared those couple videos about Israel because I've been getting multiple people from the right attacking me, so to say. I wouldn't exactly call it an attack. It's a little bit different than what I've been getting from the people on the left, but it's the same thing. It's a misunderstanding of what it means to point out what's happening with Israel and how they're controlling us in this country, and why it's important for us to point it out. In fact, I think to be America first isn't about not being united as a humanity. It's about the good qualities of the United States. That the United States was focused, at least in its initiation, in its initial point, on unity, on coming together around a centered purpose. The centered purpose was an uprising of greatness, right? To go against tyranny and to stand up against things that aren't coming from the heart. And I think the concept of, in the words like great, nationalist, woke, these have all been perverted. And once we allow ourselves to see the world through these perverted lenses, we're easily blaming someone else and saying, you're the problem. Now, I'm never going to propose that. I'm always going to try and teach people that anytime you're doing that, you have descended into Moloch consciousness. And Moloch consciousness in this way is the greatest tool for division. It's the greatest tool for divide and conquer strategies. So the powerful are going to use these types of techniques to divide us and maintain their rule. It's exactly what was happening when we broke away from Britain. It's why this country was founded and was called the Declaration of Independence. It's why nationalism, as far as being associated with America, to be an American and be America first, is a great thing. It's why making America great again is a good thing. And the people who see that as hate speech are so descended into Moloch consciousness. The people who only see woke through the tribalist side of not understanding that that word actually means awakened. And if we actually look at what all these concepts mean, they're not what we've been taught, right? And we need to rise above. We need to have an uprising in our hearts where we understand that the unity of all humanity is the goal. And when Israel has such control over our country, that doesn't mean that we're targeting all people of Israel. We're just talking about the one set of people that are abusing the privilege. And a lot of people have complained at me for posting Nick Fuentes videos because he's crass and many of his words are taken out of context because the guy's got a talk show and he talks for hours on end and has thousands and thousands of hours of running his talk show for 10 years, 3 hours a day, and he's taken out of context. But I think he's a brave soul who's come out against Israel, and he speaks out against the concept of Israel and what it means to be in a constant state of war. He speaks out against anyone who isn't America first. he holds Christian values, and I think that's something that we all need to come back to. And I want to talk also about flying an American flag. If you're trying to bring people together, the American flag is a great symbol of unity. For a long time, this country actually stood as one of the greatest nations that's ever existed on this planet. And in that way, the American flag is a symbol of unity. The stars and stripes, I mean, so many people have died for this concept. So many people have put their lives behind this great country and what it means to stand for unity. So these people that are going around right now flying the Mexican flag, but yet wanting to be in our country, they've descended, I'm sorry to say, into Moloch consciousness. It's just another form of Moloch consciousness. And the people who are flying the Israeli flag outside many senators have the Israel flag up in their office spaces and outside their doors. And that also is a descent into Moloch consciousness, because to be an American is to be united under the American flag, the flag that stands for unity. And ultimately, I think the whole of the world should be America. I think we should all be the United States, or the United Nations should be under the American flag, reconstituted in this new way that embraces everyone. That would be a true embodiment of American values. Now, what does it mean to be unified, right? What does that mean? What would that look like if we were to do that? If we took those values and spread them across the whole world? Well, I think that would be a great thing. That would be making America great again. Do you see how that's not a bad concept? Do you see how it's not a bad thing to have a nationalism that's built under unity? If that's the case, and you really take American values, Christian values, they just seem to have a little bit more of a beauty inherent in them. They seem to represent the Tao. They seem to represent Buddhism. In fact, they seem to represent all the best qualities of every nation, all the best qualities of every tribe. The unity that comes from being an American has to do with the type of unity that was created when we formed this country and when we separated from Britain. And that's why we're not called New England. That's why we're not New Britain. And we're not New Israel, although right now it kind of looks like it. It kind of looks like it. And we're all these people who think that I'm anti-Israel. That's not the case. I'm just pro-America, because the American values represent the unity that we all need to come back to. So thanks for watching. Go check out my book. It's called Dancing with the Devil, and it's about this descent into Moloch values and how we're going through this thing called the meta crisis, which is a representation of Moloch values being part of every corporation, a part of every nation, and things like the arms race being a primary example of Molochian values driving the world, and how what we need to do is come back to our hearts. So thank you for watching. My name's Isaac. I am the Explorer. This is Liberty Explored. Please like and subscribe. I really greatly appreciate it. I love you all, and God bless.